back to Coach Chioma. Happy birthday. Yes, happy birthday. But I'm saying happy birthday really because today is Easter. Happy birthday. Today we celebrate the day that Christ resurrected, the day he gave us the gift of really life brand new and life into his family, the day he gave us the gift of salvation by grace. And happy birthday. So today I wanted to give, first of all, just a quick introduction into an 8-part series that I'm going to be releasing once a week over the next 8 weeks. And this series has been pressed on my heart, at least for the last 3 weeks, simply because I am going through a very crazy storm this season. And God has been so merciful. And I feel like, at least in conversations that I've had with quite a few people, for those of you who know that I am a nurse practitioner, I work with a lot of patients every day. And one of the things that is so wholesome and beautiful is that I am able to be placed in a position where people open up and share parts of their lives that many times they haven't actually shared with other people. And I find it to be an honor to be able to be in such a space where you have that type of access. And I think that it's also important for me to be a very, very good steward of that access. So it's important for me to understand the things that I'm saying, how I'm being able to be present, how I can be empathetic, how I can really just show up and be there for them and with them. Being in that kind of space, I realized that a lot of us are going through some very, very, very hard storms this particular season. There are people who are currently going through storms, and there are others who have been through a very stormy season that has lasted years. So today I'm sharing this, or at least trying to start this introduction to the series, one, because I, just like all of them, I'm going through a particular storm right now. It's a very difficult storm, and the storm is the end of my marriage, which has been very difficult for me to deal with, but by the grace of God, I'm here and I'm able to even do this and talk about this without breaking down every second. My reason for creating this video series, I think, is because what I find is that a lot of the times when we face storms in our lives, how we go through that storm matters a lot. It is sometimes the thing that differentiates us from being able to rise up again and move forward, or fall back into old patterns and habits and addictions. Sometimes it is the thing that separates us from choosing life versus choosing death. And I think that it's just so important for some of us who are going through storms, some of us who've made mistakes even during different trials that we face, to sometimes just share how we were able to make it through the storm, or at least godly principles and very healthy habits and healthy ways of thinking that can help us that are currently going through storms and people who might be facing a storm in the future. So this particular series was kind of put on my heart about 2 to 3 weeks ago. I was just meditating on my own and just continuously asking God to please show me the ways for me to kind of get through it, so that I don't fall apart, so that I don't lose myself, so that I don't merge myself into the identity of somebody else. But I wanted to merge myself into his own identity. I wanted to know who I was in him, through him, and just as dictated by him. And a lot of my prayers really surrounded that. And he has been very merciful, because I'm in a space where I feel a lot more mentally, physically, and emotionally strengthened and fortified compared to where I was 2 months ago. So when I was meditating on this topic 2 weeks ago, the thing that came into my mind was, I said, how does a captain, a female captain, okay, how does she actually prepare when she's about to embark on a journey? Before she gets in her boat with her teammates and she is going to sail into the sea, what does she do? How does she prepare herself? Does she have a list that she goes through and checks off? What does she do? And so I started diving into just understanding how a captain actually takes care of her ship. But more specifically, where these videos are going to be targeting is when she does all that she does the right way, and she embarks on a journey, even though she has plotted her entire trip, She knows exactly where she's going, and she understands the weather conditions and has a clear estimation of what she might face when she gets there. What happens while she is on her journey and she hits an unexpected storm? What does she do? How does she prevent herself and her ship and her entire crew from capsizing? And after reading and studying, I found out that there are 8 specific principles that this captain would follow. And the beautiful part about it was that it mirrored biblical principles that I am going to share in this 8-part series. If you are going through a storm, I really do believe that this is going to be helpful. Why? Because I've gone through the storm and the worst part of the storm is behind me, I made some mistakes and I did some things that were right. And I wanted to share in some of these videos, I will get a little bit vulnerable in sharing some of the mistakes that I made, because I don't believe that we all have to face the same issues in order for us to learn and become wiser. A lot of the times I believe that other people's stories can be what we can learn from and take certain things from there that we can apply into our own lives, so that we don't have to necessarily worsen the situation that we are already in or subject ourselves into a more difficult space, because the storm, the trial you're going through is hard enough. So I have my laptop here, so I'm gonna look down, but I wanted to just share the 8 specific principles that this captain would follow. So the very first principle that we're going to deal with next week, we're going to talk about the first principle of remaining steady. And what does it mean to remain steady? We'll talk about that. I'm gonna share how we can learn different tactics on how to remain calm, how to remain steady and grounded amidst the entire chaos. And that grounding is a grounding on our faith. That grounding is a grounding on Jesus. The second series, we're going to talk about navigating wisely. And then the question is, when you're in a storm, what does it look like for us to navigate? Not from a place of severe emotional turmoil, because when we make decisions like that, we end up making permanent decisions on temporary situations. But sometimes to navigate wisely might require us either seeking the help of Christ by reading the stories and seeing how God navigated his own trials. Sometimes it's simply in meditating and in prayer and waiting on God to tell us what to do and where to go. Other times it might require us actually seeking godly counsel. And sometimes we do have to seek counseling from professionals. So in order for us to navigate wisely, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the second series. In the third series, we're going to talk about reinforcements. And here I'm going to mention, what parts of our lives need reinforcements. I think at this point, it's important for us to know what our weaknesses are and what our strengths are, what our addictions are. There's always that fleshly place that we tend to want to run to whenever we're struggling. And I think every single person's weakness is very different. But the more we come to a sense of self-awareness, we know those areas of our lives, and we know that when we are going through a storm, we need to fortify and reinforce those areas. For some of us, it is our mental health. For some of us, it is our physical health. For some of us, it is our emotional health. And for others, it is our spiritual health. And unfortunately, for some of us, it's all of them. In series 3, we're going to talk about the different things that we can do and we can adopt into our lives to strengthen and reinforce those aspects. The fourth series, we're going to talk about moving forward. While you're in a storm, as a captain, she is looking at a storm that she is currently in. She can't go back. The only way to get to the other side is to get through that storm. And so in series 4, we're going to talk about what does moving forward look like when you're in the midst of a storm. I can tell you that for me, that was the most challenging part. But then I found out that moving forward is different for different people. For some of us, moving forward might look like, I just need God to give me the strength to just see the next hour and just tell me what I need to do in order to make it through the next hour. For me, in my storm, I needed help in getting through 12 hours in a day. That was what I needed. At the worst part of the storm, I could not see the end of the day. It was overwhelming for me to see that, for me to look at it, for me to envision it. And so I was praying for God to help me envision 12 hours. The work that I do usually is a 12-hour shift, so it did help that when I came to work, that I knew that I was there to try to add value. And so asking God to give me the strength to pour into people even though I was weak and I was empty. And it was amazing because by me taking that need that I had and giving it to God, He actually strengthened me throughout my work week. That way I could actually pour into people. And then by the time I was done with work, I felt so full that I could actually see the next day. And the more you move forward, the longer and the further away you can see. For series 5, we're going to dive into communication. This is another very, very tricky aspect of when you're in a storm. Why? Because what I find is that a lot of times, and this is from my experience also with patients, that when they are going through severe trials, they tend to isolate. They tend to lock themselves up. They don't share of the pain that they're feeling, the things that are going on in their head. And because they don't share, they don't open themselves up to receive love from people, to receive resources from people. Sometimes simply to have someone just be there with them. What I found is that a lot of the times when we isolate because we're afraid. We're afraid of the shame, we're afraid of the guilt, we're afraid of the naysayers and the I told you so's, we're afraid of the people who are there to condemn us. Sometimes we're just afraid of who we become when we expose that part of ourselves. We're afraid of how people will see us and look down on us. In many ways, we look at our ability to be vulnerable and open up as an act of weakness. And I believe that that is one of the ways that the devil has been able to attack us when we're in the midst of a storm. What I found in my storm was that vulnerability Christ actually is requiring of us, to come and pour that to Him, bring it to Him because He understands. I also found out that 2 people are better than 1, because when one falls, the other person is there to pick them up. When 2 of them come together and hold themselves, they're able to warm themselves up. And so when I realized that 2 people are stronger than 1, a 3-fold cord is not easy to break, that's when I realized also that God did not make us in silos. He made us to be connected with each other. And He made us that way because in the connection with each other, we actually experience the love of God. In series 6, which is probably my favorite aspect, we're going to talk about trusting the captain. In this analogy, the captain actually symbolizes the person who is at the helm of the ship, the person who directs the ship. And the ship is your life. So then the question then becomes, who is the captain of your ship? And do you trust the captain? I find in my experience, in the past mistakes that I've made, and in my experience with my patients, that a lot of the times we are the ones that are at the helm of the ship. Sometimes we step aside and abdicate our position and allow other people at the helm of our ship. So some of us are living our lives based on what we desire alone, and some of us are living our lives based on what other people expect of us. But what I found that was the most powerful way was to let go of the helm for Christ to step in and take control. So in series 6, we're going to talk about what it means to actually trust God. The 7th series, we're going to talk about what it means to stay vigilant. Now, if you have been through a storm, if you have been through a very challenging time in your life, you can testify with me that you are at your most vulnerable, meaning that the devil will do everything that he can to try to attack every sense of who you are. And being vigilant and remaining vigilant is a very, very important part of the storm. So in the 7th series, we're going to dive into that a bit further, and we're going to share some of the principles, some of the tools, some tips, some actions, some things that you can actually begin to add into your life so that you can begin to remain vigilant and protect yourself from the darts of the enemy. And finally, The last series, we're going to talk about endurance and perseverance. Because at the end of the day, you don't know the timing of your storm. You don't know when your storm is going to come, and you don't know how long your storm is actually going to last. And I think for most of us, that is probably the most difficult part of the storm. But I'm going to tell you this. If you do every other principle the right way, the enduring part comes with the grace of God, because you can stand firm in the knowledge that this storm will actually pass and you will find yourself on the other side. Remember, weeping might be happening right now. You may find yourself crying every day, but joy, it always comes in the morning. And that morning is at the right time, God's time. And being able to endure and persevere, waiting on the right time, on the appointed time of God, when you are at the other side, the person that you become is a person who fully trusts God, who obeys Him. And it's a very beautiful life, I believe, that we can live, because then we begin to experience what fulfillment really looks like. So this was I don't know how many minutes this video is, but this is just a quick introduction to what the 8-part series is going to look like. I'm not quite sure if it's going to be a public video or if I'm going to make it private and just share the link to those who are interested, because I am going to be sharing, personal aspects of my life, because, like I said, I am going through a storm, and it has been a very, very difficult storm for me. And like I said, for those of you who are going through your own challenges and trials, I cannot imagine what it looks like, especially if you didn't have a community like I did, if you didn't have the resources to reach out to counselors and therapists like I did, if you don't even know Jesus like I do. I can't imagine how hard this storm must be for you. But I'm hoping that by me sharing a little bit about mine, that hopefully you can find some solace. You can find one thing or two things from my story that would actually help you persevere. Or maybe just by watching me be transparent online, that you realize that you are actually not alone. That there's so many of us that are here going through things alongside with you, but also praying with you. All right, guys, have a very good day. And like I said, happy Easter. My very first video is going to drop on Sunday. All right, April the 7th. Bye.